old saying that a woman's work is never done, and during the Second World War, that phrase took on a whole new meaning. Over 100,000 men were sent overseas in the Army, Navy and Air Force. Someone had to do the jobs they left behind. And down on the farm, that someone were the workers from the Women's Land Service.
It was originally the Women's Land Corps in 1941, and then it was formally recognised as the Women's Land Service in September 1942. It started in 1941 because so many New Zealand men had gone overseas to fight in the Second World War, and it left a huge shortage of manpower on New Zealand's farms. 2,700 girls actually served on farms formally, but hundreds more actually helped on their family farms and weren't formally recognised. So it was thousands of young women. These overalls were part of the official issued working uniform for land girls, and they were allowed 3 sets of overalls each.
At the time, this was quite a change. Usually only men had jobs outside the home, especially hard physical work like farming. But it didn't take long for the land girls to wear in their uniforms and get used to the new tools of the trade.
Well, they were doing everything, absolutely everything, from fence making to milking, crutching, slaughtering, riding horses all day. They had to do absolutely everything that a farmer would normally do. These particular overalls were owned by Elizabeth Williams, and she worked on her father's property in Poverty Bay and also the neighbour's property. So she was quite experienced, but she became a formal land girl and was given these 3 overalls by the government. Well, Elizabeth loved her overalls so much, she actually wore them her whole life after the war. So she wore them for farming and house painting, anything that required, well, that had dirty work. She actually wore her overalls. So she wore them right until she died, which was last year. The knife belonged to Doris Buckrell, who was Doris Whiting during the war. Now, she was a 22-year-old dressmaker from Pahiatua, and she desperately wanted to be a land girl against her father's wishes. So she signed up at a farm near Gladstone in the Wairarapa with one of her best friends, Madge. One of Doris's jobs were to actually slaughter the rams for the farmer. He was often busy and away. So one day he asked the girls to slaughter a ram. So they got their knife and then they tried to cut the ram's neck and totally failed the first time. And the poor ram was bleeding and dashing around, and the girls had to go get the farmer to help them. So really it was practice made perfect because the girls weren't trained. As I said, those 2 girls were actually dressmakers before they arrived on that farm. It's really significant for Te Papa that we collect such ordinary, everyday looking objects, because that knife in a drawer wouldn't mean much to anybody, but to Doris, it represented the happiest time in her life, when she actually did something very meaningful to her and as part of her war effort for the country. And this knife not only represents her story, it actually represents the stories of about 3,000 women who worked very hard and haven't really been that recognised since.
So it wasn't just soldiers on the front line who were hard at work during the war. These may not look very unusual, but in 20th century history, sometimes ordinary items carry the most life-changing stories.